Employees, who was the worst coworker you ever had? I worked in a bookstore, we had a cafe, and the cafe manager was my worst coworker ever. She was nice and all but so unhygienic. We'd had to discuss more than once not using the dish sink in the cafe's back room to bathe herself. She always smelled slightly sour. Well, one day while covering the cafe manager's break, an employee discovered a pair of freshly stained underwear that she'd washed in the dish sink hanging off the counter in the cafe's back room. She got fired for that one. She was not homeless. I'd driven her home more than once when her car was totaled, and from what we were told, she owned her home. Other issues? Maybe. Couldn't say, and I won't speculate, but regardless, it isn't a minimum wage employee's job to look out for their bosses who make twice as much as they do. IDK how she even got promoted, honestly. I will say she was promoted a few months before the general manager was fired and replaced, and then she was fired by the new GM after this event. The story too. He was 17 at the time. We'll call him Jerry. We were working in a grocery store when I met him. Jerry wanted so bad to be a bodybuilder, bro. He idolized The Rock. He spent countless hours in the gym every day. He woke up at 4 a.m. to run 5 kilometers, only slept for 20-minute increments throughout the day because that's what Marines do. And he made sure everyone knew about his no excuses attitude. And all he ever did was complain and make excuses. Jerry would give speeches about hard work and dedication, and whatever other B's he obviously pulled from a motivational Instagram that day. He really did put time in at the gym, though. He had the arms and chest to show it. But if you gave the kid a basic task, he was useless. Cleaning the bathrooms? He left stains and toilet paper everywhere. Stocking shelves? Product was always facing the wrong way or in the wrong spot, offering additional assistance to customers. He never bothered, always got yelled at, and never changed. Even just consistently working was an issue for Jerry because he had to stop like every hour to eat a snack or drink a Monster. For some reason, Jerry thought I was his friend, and he would always complain to me when he got yelled at by management. He made up this conspiracy theory that management hated him and wanted to see him fail. According to him, he was never actually ducking up. Management was just bullying him. He would say crap like, "They're just jealous. They don't work as hard as me." And that makes them jealous. Jerry lived in a fantasy land that was a product of too many quotes he probably got from some bodybuilding calendar. Eventually, Jerry quit because he was tired of the bull crap, and he went to work in fast food under his older brother. Jerry got fired by his older brother. Jerry tried joining the military, but apparently couldn't hack it. Tried becoming a cop, but couldn't hack it. Now he's a valet at the local mega church, and he recently turned 25. He'll probably get fired or quit there too. Story 3. My first job out of college, I worked in an HR department. We hired a new VP of HR, so my boss's new boss. Before day one, I scheduled a flight of hers and forwarded her all the information along with a friendly email saying that I was very excited that she was starting at our company. I told her to let me know if she needed anything. Very typical email for me to send. Didn't matter your role at the company. Day one, she walks in and asks for me specifically. I stood up and smiled and went to shake her hand warmly, because who asks for the lowest on the totem pole? She refused to shake my hand and showed me an email. The email I sent her with her flight information. She asked what was wrong with it. I was alarmed and read through it again, then had to sheepishly admit I wasn't sure, but I'd love to know for next time. She said, "You come across as such a brown noser. I came to talk to you first so you could rub your face in my ass now and we could get it over with." I told her that's how I talk to everyone at the company. I see us all as a team, and that's how I work. She guffawed and handed me a piece of paper she had shoved in her pocket. "Here, good to know you are for real. You can get started then." My list of tasks included getting her computer set up, already done, her email up and running, already done, her new passwords, already done, and a few other things for comfort around her office, which I could complete in about 5 minutes. I did so and returned promptly. She slapped the piece of paper out of my hand and called me a liar. I told her making sure that she was comfortable on her first day was part of my job, and I accomplish many of the tasks before new employees arrive. She asked me to escort another employee into her office, so I went and got that employee and brought them down to the new VP's office. That employee was promptly fired, no reason given, and the two had never spoken before, and I was asked to escort that employee out. It was at that moment I decided to start looking for new roles. The new VP basically made me her git for the 3 months, while I looked. I was denied any vacation requests, sick leave, breaks, when my peers in my department could do whatever, whenever. I finally got an offer and went to resign with my 2 weeks' notice. I told my direct boss first, who congratulated me, and he also said he'd tell the VP for me since he was so worried about her reaction. The new VP came in screaming about how working for her was the opportunity of a lifetime. How could I pass that up? I am an idiot. That's why nobody can be trusted. Lots of other crap went down with that woman, but I was very happy to walk out that door. The owner hired her. He enabled all of this. There was no reporting her because it would have been directly to him, and that would have gotten us fired immediately. Why didn't I shut down and turn into a git? Because I am a rug and you can step all over me, especially when I was 22. I'm more likely to stick up for myself now. How was that firing allowed to happen? I'm located in an at-will state, which means in short that anyone can be fired for any reason at any time without just cause, so long as that reason is not discriminatory. Trust me when I say that there was more than one spectacular firing, worthy of popcorn, awful to watch unfold in real life, when she was there. Another story about this git. About 1 month into her tenure, she pulled all of us into a room and made sure we were sitting down. She then told us that a department member of ours had died over the weekend. We were shocked and saddened, and obviously emotional. VP then did two things. She didn't let us go home to mourn in peace, and we weren't allowed to tell anyone that this employee had died, only that they were no longer at the company. I could only apologize when people asked, say I was not allowed to talk about it, and quietly suggest that they Google her and that they could come to me with any concern. Her obituary was public, and one of the first things you would see on a cursory Google search. VP Git went to the funeral on the company's behalf and forbade us from going. We ended up putting a picture of her up and paying our respects that way in a corner of the office. Everyone was looking for a new role after that. Story 4. The subject matter expert, who was supposed to be my mentor, decided she was threatened by my existence and seized every opportunity to try to get me fired. I didn't get fired. I worked extra hard to figure it all out on my own and eventually got promoted because of it, so damn you, Janet. Story 5. Had a girl starting her PhD in the lab I worked. She was the embodiment of entitled, lazy, and spoiled. She'd come late, leave early, do next to no work, and constantly complained she needed more money. After a while, we all just hated her, mostly due to the fact that while we all worked our asses off, she did next to nothing but bosses didn't seem to care at all and just let her hang around in the lab for years. When the time came to hand in her thesis, we were all curious what she'd hand in since she basically hadn't done any work. I was convinced she'd somehow weasel her way out of it, like she had done all the time. I was convinced that when you can pull off being in a lab for years doing no work but no one fires you, you must be somehow a bit clever to pull that off. But nope, she failed so spectacularly like I'd never seen anyone fail before or since. So note to everyone, you can't be lazy and stupid, you can only be one of the two. It was a combination of shortcomings. One issue was really basic admin stuff. Things like not sticking to the required format, not handing in additional documents which were required, or not sticking to deadlines when it came to handing in the written thesis itself. And apparently she wanted to hand in her thesis without checking back with her advisors. When they did get the thesis to check, turned out the content of what she had written was apparently not exactly up to scratch. As far as I know, they gave her another few months to fix all the shortcomings, giving her a new deadline. But she never handed anything in. Story 6. I work with a rock star employee. This means they're ducking brilliant, but a nightmare to work with. They frequently forget to attend meetings, work hours that piss off everyone else. They're a complete hypocrite when it comes to working standard. Forget about everyone else. Piss off their coworkers by their constant, but mostly valid complaining and can't follow the simple rules everyone else in the company has to follow. Unfortunately, they're absolutely amazing at their core job, and we'd be ducked without them because our workplace is obsessed with hiring cheap overqualified. So we suck it up and have them contribute in a different way to our already stupidly toxic environment. Why the heck haven't I left this crap show of a company yet? Story 7. I have two who actually tie into each other. I worked at Walmart when I was 20 and worked in the back, receiving, sorting, and staging product as it came off the truck. There were 4 of us, the lead Robert, myself, and 2 kids. We also had the 3 folks from the team that processed returns to merchants. One of those was a middle to late-aged man named Jan. We all reported to one boss in the back who was never actually there, and none of us really knew when he'd be around. To start off with, I had worked at a Walmart previously, so I had experience coming in. You may think it's Walmart. What kind of experience do you need? But I had worked to build a store from the foundation up, so I knew all sorts of stuff about everywhere. You'd think I'd be on a track to promotion, and so did I. Till Robert just vanished. Robert was gone for 2 months. During this time, the boss had been notified, and he asked me to step into Robert's role as lead, which consisted of a bit of scheduling and mostly making sure the others didn't banana around all day. I did this no problem for 2 months. Then, as quietly as he disappeared, Robert came back. No notes, no doctor's explanations, no anything. He was immediately handed his old vest, and the boss told him he'd sort out the rehire later. And just like that, the interview I had for Robert's position as a lead was closed. And Robert was rehired without any penalty, despite 2 months no-show. On that particular day, it was 110F, and I was already absolutely fuming when a truck that we had been waiting on rolled up. Turns out the driver had tried to drive in overnight and was going to exceed his driving allowance. So it pulled over at 6 a.m. and slept till 1 p.m. The trailer had sat in the sun and was hot. I'm talking, open the door and heat just blasts you. But we needed to get it unloaded. So me and one of the boys dove in and started pitching everything we could out. Robert got a pallet jack and was trying to arrange some stuff to make the 2 7-feet-high pallets of dog food easier to get out, but had got them stuck instead and called Jan over to help. Jan is a big guy. He's German, complains loudly and often, and ate sauerkraut without fail for lunch every day. Jan and Robert are working away trying to get these pallets out while me and the kid were basically stuck in the sweltering trailer. Suddenly I hear Robert cough and Jan goes, "Oof, oh, ooh," and Robert backs slowly away from the truck while Jan just gets back into it and keeps working away. Then the smell hit. We're in a trailer that's easily 120 in the sun, baking, sweating, and barely able to breathe, and Jan just let out the most god-awful silent fart. Sauerkraut and sausage. We had fans blowing into the trailer over the dog food pallets to keep me and this poor kid from dying of heat exhaustion, and suddenly we're ground zero of this nuclear fart. I can taste it. My eyes are watering. The poor kid next to me is dry heaving, and we're absolutely stuck because Robert jammed the goddamned pallets together at a ducked-up angle. I slice the shrink wrap and just start chucking bags of dog food behind us. The kid starts helping while he's gagging, and finally we clear about 4 rows out, and I boost him up and crawl up myself and out into the warehouse. I ripped my vest off and walked into the office where the boss was and chuck it in his face and walk out. As I leave, I can hear him asking Robert what happened and Christ, what's that smell? Story 8. One I hired. She was our neighbor, a young mother whose husband was a truck driver. I knew they struggled with finances, had been evicted from past apartments, gone to their church for help with food and utilities, etc. When she told me she was laid off from her job at a bank, I hired her at the store I managed. It was the beginning of the busy season, and I figured that would give her a few months to get back on her feet while she looked for something back in banking. Instead, she worked for me less than 2 weeks. In that time, she stole from the register and another employee was late twice, and quit by leaving her uniforms balled up in a grocery bag with a note saying she just couldn't do it anymore. That chick was a one-scam artist, and I held a grudge against her for a long time. Story 9. He stole from people, would let himself in uninvited to homes, groom and prey on teens, harassed a girl for years and beat her when she rejected him, and more. He didn't get the boot until years later because he was such a good worker. The guy is in his mid to late 30s and still does this crap working not far from a middle school in his former workplace. When any of the above happened, the higher-ups would say, "He never acted like around me," and would ignore the situation. Story 10. In my workplace, people are human. They have a brain. They can understand things. They can think for themselves, and they know they can try to fix a common problem by themselves before calling for help. I'm the computer guy in a small company of 40 people. We use an in-house program that runs on a Linux machine, used for a specific task about 3 times a day. I've made a manual to help the users use the program before calling for help. At first, it was straightforward and short. Over time, people made mistakes when following the instructions because they skipped a step or didn't act naturally. Click once instead of twice to open a folder, etc. So to fix this, I made the manual slightly longer, with details and screenshots. At this point, I had several pages to show how to save a file. Click on the program's Save button. On the new window, double-click on the folder named X, then click on Save. All with screenshots of each step, the buttons circled in red as if they were mentally and visually impaired. Anyone can use the program, even if they don't have half a brain. Every year, I did a personalized training for each user. I spend an hour with them, going through the manual, explaining the steps, answering questions. Well, this one guy just didn't get it. He gave himself the mission to make himself look dumber than a pile of steam. Instead of going through the manual, working the steps, and going on with this privileged instruction, he spent 30 minutes trying to debate each phrase of the first page of the manual. That sentence might be ambiguous. Maybe it could be interpreted like this or that. Instead of this word, I maybe would have used that word. Dude, those words have the same meaning. And why would you struggle with this? Can't you read? Isn't this your native language? How come you're the only one struggling with simple sentences? Eventually, I pressed him to move on. I had a schedule to follow and didn't have time for his games. He managed to follow the procedure pretty quickly, actually, since we were running out of time. But on the last step, the very last step, he entirely shut off his brain. That last step was turning off the computer. It's a Linux, so the display is very slightly different. It's a CentOS 6 with KDE. For those who don't know, it looks exactly like Windows. There's even the Start button with a 4-colored flag in the bottom left corner. The instructions said to turn off the computer by clicking on the bottom left button, exactly like on Windows. What would you expect? Clicking on the button would open some sort of menu, and maybe there would be something like exit or shut down, perhaps in red. Well, this guy couldn't imagine anything. He couldn't even find the button in the bottom left corner. The fact that the manual said exactly like on Windows didn't make him think it's the button at the very bottom, the most on the left, that looks like a flag like on Windows. He said, "I see several buttons in the bottom left corner. I don't know which one to click on. I can't continue." Crossed his arms, sat back, and waited. I tried to reason with him. I tried to make him see he's unreasonable. What does the button look like in Windows? Where is it on the screen? Look at this button in the bottom left. Do you think it looks like the Start button in Windows? but he simply couldn't accept that he had to use any mental faculties, however basic, to shut down a computer. Maybe the manual should show which button is the start button. Maybe it would be less confusing. Dude, how come you're the only one who even noticed this isn't Windows? Why are you the only one struggling? I shut down the computer myself and kicked him out. Now every step has a screenshot in the manual. Instead of being a straightforward 3-page manual, it's 30 pages long. People make mistakes because they find it too detailed, skip a step, and aren't doing the right thing anymore. Honestly, from the beginning, some people just wing it, never open the manual, and never have an issue. The program itself isn't complicated or confusing, but that guy, the guy who shat in my boots, the guy who can shut off his brain at will and play dumb while making an ass of himself, he had the nerve to come up to me one day and say, while trying to do some small talk, I installed Windows 10 on a computer at home. I had this error, and that error did this and that to fix it, and so on. So he does have a brain. He can use an OS with which he isn't familiar and even troubleshoot it. But he thinks he can make me believe he can't shut down a computer by using the same interface that is implemented in most computers for the last 30 years. Worse still, he sometimes calls me because he's having issues with that program I've patiently trained him on when he has an issue. When I come to the rescue, he always says, "See, computers aren't always so reliable after all. All those ones and zeros sometimes get mixed up." But after one look, I tell him, "Read this sentence in the manual. You didn't do this step. You have done a mistake. It's never the program's fault. It's always yours. You cannot even read." It's been years, but I still think about that day with anger. I will never forgive. I will never forget. Story 11. She was actually a very nice person, but she made my job so much more. When I was a new graduate vet at my first job, there was another new vet working there as well. Now, I have some self-esteem and confidence issues myself, but she was something else. For months, she'd come find me for nearly literally every other consult to get me to examine her animal to make sure she didn't miss anything, or talk to her clients because she wasn't able to say things like, "No, this doesn't need antibiotics," to I as effectively doing 2 jobs half the time. It got even worse when one senior vet got sick and the other quit. So it was literally just me and her at what was supposed to be a 4-vet practice for 6 weeks. Story 12, worked at an Americanized Japanese fast casual restaurant. We used to cook these gigantic pots of noodles. Like, you better use proper lifting procedures or you'll hurt yourself. It was a daily affair. From the stove, they get tossed in an ice bath and then portioned into roughly 1 million individual bags. Obviously, nobody liked doing it, but it had to be done. This one kid who always sucked, slow, late, dumb, complained, just generally bad, decided that if he just poured them down the garbage disposal, he wouldn't have to portion them. Not including the water, it was probably 40 pounds of noodles, 18 kilograms. Well, it clogged the pipes to such an extent that floor drains across the back of house started flooding and we couldn't use the dishwasher or drain sinks. And guess what? We just cooked more frickin' noodles. I know it's not the biggest deal, but the selfishness required to destroy property, screw our shift over, really screw the next shift over, and the stupidity to think nobody would notice, just to escape some tedium when he was going to be in the building all day anyway, just boggles my mind. I would prefer to work with the aggressive felon who would threateningly coerce coworkers into seeing his crafty metal band perform afternoon shows at men's clubs. Thank you very much. Story 13. Guy had my name in his diary notebook, listed under people that need to be taught a lesson. He was fired immediately and I wasn't allowed to come and go alone. Story 14. Worked with the owner's son at a marketing company. Dude was disgusting. I would say about 400 pounds, wore his pants under his belly, so belly was always hanging out. He had been let go a few years prior to, when I started because a coworker caught him watching adult film on his laptop while at work, and he had been rehired about a year after I started. This guy ate gefilte fish for lunch at least 3 days a week, would get sushi and drink the remaining soy sauce, pants to the floor when he was at the urinal. Just an all-around slob. The last straw was when he pulled out his phone and thought his headphones were plugged in, and was blasting some nasty adult film in an office full of people. My friend had to tell him to turn it off. Nothing came of it. I left that place soon after. Story 15. My manager. After break, a girl didn't come back, and I asked why, and my manager said it was because her grandfather passed away, and then said she could have at least finished her shift. Story 16. There was a guy I worked with who, while he was fine and good at his job, just didn't bathe. It filled the room. I could tell when he entered the building from the next floor up, like, how do you tell a superior about washcloths and deodorant? Story 17. Someone who, by now, would go as an entitled Karen. I was still a teenager back then, and it was just a side job for me. I was a sales assistant in a bakery, or to be exact, in one store of a bakery chain. I'd been there almost a year, worked 3 times every week, and usually worked alone, closing the store. I knew what I was doing. So did the apprentices, who were my age. They hired a part-time worker. We were the age of her children, and she treated us as if she had the right to give us orders. Didn't ask if we would clean the glasses, but ordered us. Didn't do things herself. Knew everything better. No, you can't take that cloth for window cleaning. Take the other. We always take the other one. The most horrible one was when I was with a customer and sold them a very big bread, bigger than our paper bags. I put it into 2 bags. Not in the plastic bag, as bread really does not belong into plastic bags. In front of the customer, she told me multiple times how what I was doing was wrong and I needed to do it differently and how dumb and wrong it was. I finished the sale and took her back, and I, a 17-year-old, scolded her massively never to do that in front of customers again and that she had no idea what she was talking about. Why was I so sure? A month before I had been to a workshop on product sales, profession attire, and behavior promotion, which covered exactly this behavior. The apprentices made her quit after a few months. Story 18. I used to work as an operations supervisor for a security company. I had a coworker that was used for backup. Let's call him James. We lost one of our regulars and had to use James. James would complain about the work all the time, and he wasn't very good at his job. I was working the night shifts 1 rotation, and he was covering the afternoons. We were working a 12-hour back-to-back. I was working midnight, noon, and James was working noon, midnight. On Saturday, he relieved me at noon as normal, and I went home to sleep. I woke up around 8 p.m. and went for a run. I got a series of text messages, but I didn't check my phone until I finished my run. When I finished, I got texts from James. He told me that I needed to cover his shift the next day because he was too stressed out and needed time away from the office. Essentially, he was asking me to cover my shift later that night, midnight, noon, cover his shift, noon, midnight, and then cover my normal shift, midnight, noon. He asked me to work a 36-hour shift because he was stressed out. I told him no and called him crazy. The moment I said this, he agreed to come in as normal. Why he needed to ask me this? The reason why he asked me to cover his shift was because there was a girl he liked, but she started dating someone else. Story 19. I work in a union environment and I'm a steward, so I often end up knowing far more about what's going on with employees than management does, and often way more than I really want. This guy, though, I'd have directed to another steward, because even though I'm there to protect the collective bargaining agreement and defend the employee, I wanted this dude gone in the worst way. I never represented him, thank God. I started hearing about him from other stewards. He didn't apply for different jobs. He was moved, typically with no word on it, which is rare to see even once, much less the 4 times it happened. What I kept hearing was that female coworkers were universally concerned about being alone with him. He was one of those guys that sets predator senses going. Then he got put at my office, and I saw it for myself. I work in human services, and one of the things we're trained for is recognizing abuser patterns. It's one thing to read about it or talk to someone who is living with it, but the first time you see an abusive, manipulative person turn on the charm to relax their target, it's a chilling ducking, let me tell you. He went through about 3 relatively vulnerable women here. Every last one of them thought the girl before couldn't have been right and that he was the nicest guy. You just don't understand, and so on. He had his hands all over one while they were driving in a government car, had her tits out, etc. And I didn't find out about it until way later. He eventually went to another job, and the last I heard, had gotten embroiled in a 3-way dispute between 2 women he was sleeping with in his unit, causing them both to get divorced, and then HR came and asked me what I knew. Easily one of the scariest individuals I've ever personally worked with. His eyes were like a shark's, just cold. Story 20. I worked as a barista for a while, and I had this one customer who came in a few times a week. He was awkward, not in the cute way, but I didn't think much of it. He'd try to start conversation, and I'd be polite, but I wouldn't necessarily encourage him. He mentioned where he lived, and I noted that my chain had a coffee shop in his town, but he drove a couple towns over to mine, which I thought was odd. One day I'm at work, and he orders a coffee, and as I'm making it, he starts talking about how cool and pretty I am and asks if we could go out sometime. I was pretty annoyed, and I politely declined, saying I had a boyfriend, which I did at the time, and he said, "He's lucky. I wish I had a girl like you," which creeped me out. That was on a Friday. I come in for my shift on Monday, and he's behind the counter in a uniform. Excitedly tells me he got a job here. I didn't really know what to do. Not only did he continue to hit on me and constantly try to get my social media from, he was absolutely ducking incompetent and a health hazard. He came in with a disgusting rash on his arm once, and he would scratch it and then handle people's food. I told the manager if she didn't fire him, I'd quit. I was the longest working employee there by far, so I figured she'd fire him, but she didn't. So I left. Story 21. Oh man, where do I begin? I worked for a medical supply company who specialized in oxygen therapy and other respiratory supplies. I worked with this guy. We'll call him John. John was very religious and was a part of one of those cult-like churches who speak in tongues and force their beliefs on you. One day, John tried to get into a religious discussion. I politely passed and told him that I didn't have a problem with it, and what 2 consenting adults did in the privacy of their own bedroom was none of my business nor his. After a while, he saw that I wouldn't play into these discussions at work or any other time, and this made him angry. John would act very Christian-like until something made him angry. He would throw things around the warehouse for having to do his job. One time, he decided to throw an oxygen tank filled to 2,000 psi. He regretted this decision when it hit one of the tank carts, sheared off the top, and took off like a homing missile right back at his shin. I believe his shin was like a jigsaw puzzle that had to be put back together because it looked like a bag of Legos between his knee and ankle. What's even better is that since he was such in a hole to me and everyone else he worked with, refused to pick up his phone for on-call like machine failure, so it would be forwarded to me in the middle of the night. I decided to let the manager know how this happened. John spent months out of work and fought the company to get workman's comp, but when they found out how it happened, he was denied, I'm assuming because he was an idiot with a short fuse. Instant karma. Story 22. I worked at a fast food chain themed around a royal figure, and we got a new assistant manager who transferred in from a fast food chain known for their special sauce. She was the whiniest person I've ever met and made everyone else do her crap for her. I was napping on my break when I was sick, and she physically grabbed me and shook me awake to do something for her. I should have refused, but I was too sick and tired to fight, so I just did it. She lasted 2 weeks before being kicked to the curb. Damn you, Brittany. Story 23? I'm going to call him Kevin. Kevin and I were partners for a summer field season that involved us technicians going out every week and camping in the remote wilderness for several days at a time. Kevin knew this when he signed up, but he was so completely ill-equipped for the job that I started keeping a list of Cavinases after a while because I needed an outlet to keep from throttling him. Here it is. He wanted to return to town on our second day of camping so he could get a milkshake. He complained about his hat getting dirty in the UTV. He uses an electric toothbrush while camping. He is terrified of us driving over the tiniest, smoothest matchstick. He crams all his camping gear into the cab of the truck, including loose pairs of dirty underwear, so it doesn't get dusty. He gave me all the heavy lifting because his allergies are making him weak. My own eyes were watering. I couldn't stop sneezing, and I was dripping bloody snot. But I pulled my weight and his. I'm a girl. He recommends rolling up the tent with an air freshener for that perfect pine-scented camping experience. He needs to closely inspect every single plant on our sites to ensure that each is not the one very obvious species we're looking for. He is a perfect compass while wayfinding. You go the opposite of where he thinks. This is true even when he's the one holding the map. He brought the UTV to a full stop so he could sneeze, then didn't. He refused to drink from our plastic water tubs because they look unsanitary. I had to show him how to open a cattle gate when it defeated him. Then another gate. Then that same gate again. He mutters in his tent that the cell service is dog crap here. We're damn camping, buddy. He hates reading and brought absolutely no means of keeping himself entertained during our off hours at the campsite. Weeks later, he still refuses to drink the water from the plastic tubs. He packed 3 fruit cups, a pint of strawberries, a bag of chips, some string cheese, and a box of Triscuits for 4 days of camping. We had to stop in town for him to buy more food and a milkshake. We were at the office and I sent him outside to check something on our truck. He came back half an hour later with Subway, and he forgot to check the truck. The mosquitoes are dog crap. The roads are dog crap. The heat is dog crap. The cold is dog crap. His tent is dog crap. Everything under heaven is dog crap to him, and I wonder if he's ever actually been camping before. He got nervous and left the rendezvous point in the UTV looking for me in precisely the wrong direction. So I spent 35 minutes hiking trying to catch him while he drove around screaming my name. He doesn't wear the UTV helmet because it's itchy and also dog crap. He kept psyching himself out and forgetting our forward radio script for checking in. I fed him the line half a dozen times before he could get it out. Bless his heart. He slept in the truck cab rather than his tent on day 6. I'm surprised it took him that long. He tried disconnecting our trailer without any tire chocks down or the pin in the trailer jack and promptly collapsed the trailer onto the ground. Our boss explicitly mentioned pin safety before we left on this hitch. Update. He did it the next 2 times I let him unhitch the trailer, but I was watching him like a hawk and caught it before the trailer collapsed. He doesn't get to unhitch the trailer anymore. Weeks later, he is still sleeping in the cab, and he wipes down the whole seat and dash with baby wipes before deigning to do so each night. He still struggles to work a cam latch. He usually tries one for a couple minutes, then gives up and has me do it. He still, late season, doesn't know how to daisy chain the excess strap when we're tying down the UTV. 5 different people, including myself, have all shown him, and he still takes 5 minutes to jam and wind and tuck the strap around the UTV frame instead. He thought a nearby 300-acre wildfire was just a dust cloud and refused to evacuate quickly. He absolutely had to spend several minutes beating the dust out of his hat before climbing into the truck. He scrupulously cleans his fingernails each night and complains incessantly about the dirt. Again, we're camping. He forgot to pack enough food. Again, we stopped in town. Again, he complained about the food we had to stop for him to buy because he got a bag of Doritos and they were too spicy. I think we can make this, he says with almost full confidence, before driving the UTV across a trickle of water through a flat bed of pebbles. He wanted to load the UTV before hitching up the trailer to the truck. If you don't see the flaw there, Google how seesaws work. He subsists mostly on chips and crackers and chews rapidly with his mouth open. He parked the truck on an incline, then forgot to turn the engine on and panicked when he shifted into drive, and we started rolling backwards downhill. There are more Kevinisms, but I should probably stop there. I hope to never see the guy again, nor meet the people that brought him into this world. Story 24. During college, when I worked food, I had a coworker that absolutely could not handle customers. I mean, we'd open and wouldn't have anyone come in for an hour. As soon as someone walked in, he'd throw a fit. He was there so long, it just broke him, I guess. Towards the end, he took a chair and sat just outside the back door to the restaurant so he didn't have to be in the place. It was really sad and pathetic, honestly. Story 25. I've been pretty lucky to get decent coworkers for all of the jobs I've had, but one former colleague stands out. I worked at a nursing home as a temporary kitchen porter one summer, whilst on break from university. It was a pretty crap job to say the least, but the vast majority of the people I worked with were pretty decent, and the residents were lovely, so it made it more tolerable. However, the activities coordinator was a horrible person generally. When I was taking something to the bins, I swore pretty mildly, like bloody hell. Turned out there was a window wide open, but nobody was at the window. Just coming back in, the activities coordinator called Leslie, not her real name, walked past me, we had never spoken, and said, "Excuse me." Once she had got my attention, she bluntly said, "Watch your language, young man." The residents could have heard that. I was pretty stunned. My gut told me that she was not a good person straight away. She otherwise was nice to me and actually thought I was one of the best workers at the nursing home and seemed pretty interested in what degree I was studying at university. But again, my gut didn't feel good about her at all. I say nice because she was pretty good to me most of it, but not to my fellow coworkers. I saw her scolding some of the carers for not giving residents' families silver trays. If residents had visitors, they always had silver trays and cutlery. If the residents didn't have any visitors, they just got the same crafty plastic trays they always got. My colleagues said to me that Leslie is a right damn idiot. She's nice to you, but she will tear you apart if you get on her bad side. Don't make her angry. Eventually, I fell out of favor with Leslie, which happened to be on the final day I worked there. She was in a really bad mood that day, and I was having a good day. Just after lunch, she went into the kitchen to interrogate my colleague about something. She did not sound too pleased. I wasn't paying attention to it at all and was having a bit of banter with another colleague in the background whilst cleaning some dishes. My colleague told me a joke, and I laughed hard. Unfortunately, the activities coordinator looked up and said, "Thunderfart, what are you laughing at?" I simply said, "Oh, just my colleague's joke." She said, "You're laughing at me, aren't you?" I said, "No, honestly, Leslie, I'm not laughing at you. We're really not." She went, "Okay, whatever," and walked past me. Suddenly, she struck my bottom with her left foot. Really hard, too. "I'll give your colleagues something to laugh about. Now get on with your work." My colleagues were just like, "What the heck?" I was really pissed off, but just got on with my tasks to prepare the kitchen for dinner service. Dinner service that evening was even worse. One of the nurses thought the portion of the desserts I made was too small for each of the residents. I offered to go and fix it, which would have only been adding a bit more to the residents' plates. The nurse went to go and find the activities coordinator just to tell her what I'd done. I got the dessert plates and added more to each plate. The activities coordinators then went round the home to find me and found me in the kitchen with all of my colleagues. She then gave me a public blocking in front of both the kitchen staff and the carers. Even as I tried to explain, she wasn't having it. She then tried to passive-aggressively insult me by subtly deriding my degree. How I held my composure, I do not know. I was seriously thinking of going, "Right, I quit," on the spot, but on the other hand, I didn't want to let down my fellow kitchen staff and I wanted to get my final paycheck. So I braved out the final hour, said my goodbyes to my colleagues, went home, and just burst into tears. Thankfully, the kitchen manager didn't ask me to come back, so that was my last day. Something funny happened after I left, though. One of my colleagues, who to this day is one of my closest friends, actually told her to duck off when she tried ordering him around. No joke. She was just so stunned, she just walked off in a huff. Thankfully, my friend is the kind of person that is so well known locally in the industry. He can quit a job on Friday afternoon and start a new one on Monday morning. He left that place anyway not long after and got a better job, a cook in a restaurant. I don't miss working in that nursing home and certainly working with Leslie. I'd rather go on the dole than work at that place again. Story 26. Roger. He was a software developer. He was asterisk, very, very smart asterisk, and stupendously incompetent in the ways that only really intelligent people can be, without everything collapsing around them. Everyone hated him. We cheered when he finally left. He was condescending to the point where he would stand behind people and tell them what to type on their computers. He believed that allocating memory and using locks in multi-threaded code was error-prone, and the source of junior programmer mistakes. He was a colossal a-hole. Years later, another coworker was getting his security clearance. I got interviewed as a reference. One of the questions was, did the applicant get along with everyone? I said, yes, except for one guy. The interview said, I've heard all about Roger, and I don't think I've ever encountered a more universally despised person. He was an Orthodox Jew, which meant that his diet whenever he traveled was really hard to maintain, especially in places like Florida. It made it hard because it really humanized him. Otherwise, he was just this giant monochromatic hole. Story 27, probably the guy I fired once for stealing. GM reversed my decision. Fired him again for walking out on the job. Again, the GM reversed my decision. Oh, and he was facing prison time for nearly hitting his niece for crying. I believe he's locked up now. Story 28, a colleague I'll call Mike. Mike was with the company for over 25 years. I know that because he was fired a few months after his 25th anniversary. When Mike started, he was a pretty decent engineer. But then the digital changeover happened. Everything to do with engineering changed to computers, and Mike simply never made the switch. Oh, he could operate a computer well enough, read and answer his email, and do some basic typing, but that was it. He had no clue how formatting worked in Mrs. Word, could barely figure out how to add 2 numbers in Excel, and he was completely hopeless with almost all of the specialized software we had to use daily. He wasn't a bad person by any stretch of the imagination, so we tried to explain some of this stuff, and he'd appear to understand it, but 2 days later, he completely forgot about it. At one point, someone changed the ringtone on his work phone to Wiggle by Jason Derulo and set the volume to max. Mike didn't know how to change the ringtone or even how to lower the volume. In the end, we were supposed to be a team of 4, but the other 3 were constantly distracted from our own work, so we could fix basic errors in Mike's work before they could cause serious problems. You'd get a Word document from Mike, and first have to spend 20 minutes fixing the formatting on it before it was passable, and that was just the easy part. After he was fired, 2 of us basically spent a good portion of the next 3 months fixing and catching up on all the admin he had neglected to do on his project. I don't begrudge him all that much because, like I said, he was a nice enough fellow on a social level, but I'm glad he's gone, and I no longer have to clean up after him. Story 29. I work as a dental technician. I have a coworker who was so excited to know that I'm Korean like him. I wasn't much excited about it. He's 57, I'm 28. When I initially started, I received some training from him. He would constantly berate me for not making some of the products perfect in his standards, while my other coworkers praised me for learning so quickly in a week. He'd call my products crap and that I suck at my job. He doesn't speak English very well, despite living in America for 20 years. Whenever he hears other people talking, he jumps and starts talking about completely unrelated topic. When others are talking about apples, he starts talking about oranges. He misunderstands the point of conversation, and I eventually stopped talking to him. What is so annoying is that he tries to butt into mine or others' conversations when we are having small talks or chats about our lives. But when our team or the whole company is having a meeting or making an important announcement, he comes to me and asks me to translate, but in a commanding way rather than politely asking. The issue that arises from his lack of English proficiency, as well as misunderstandings, is that he relays false information to everyone at work. For example, our previous GM gave bonuses to the staff who exceeded in production numbers, but he told everyone that everyone was getting bonuses. He tends to make stories up, which caused him to lose trust among everyone. He complains constantly about our work, company, our manager, our GM, etc. He'd blend in profanity and start labeling everyone. Our GM is a big guy, and he'd call him Ginormous Tubby. Whenever he got furloughed, he would start blaming other people for him being sent home early. He likes to monitor everyone on their workloads and personal lives. I come to work far earlier than he does, 6 a.m. versus 9 a.m., and whenever I get ready to go, he'd ask me why I'm leaving so early. He'd start lecturing me that I need to work harder and longer just because he stays until 6 p.m., while I leave at 3 p.m. Another example is when one of our coworkers' BMW had an engine issue and was left at a mechanic to get repaired. He assumed that my coworker took a bad care of the BMW, how oil changes should be done every 5,000 miles. A young fellow like my coworker shouldn't be driving such an expensive car, etc. He drives an old Toyota truck. What got me to report him to HR is when he talked to me about one of our admin groups. There was a 22-year-old recent college graduate who started working for us. He started talking about how hot she is, how he'd like to duck her, etc. After she left, another young girl came in, and he drools over her from time to time. He has a wife and a son who recently graduated from UC Berkeley, and sometimes when they stop by our lab, I feel bad that their husband, Dad, is dreaming of being with a younger girl. I also caught him watching adult film on his break. There are countless reasons why he gives me migraines on a daily basis, but those are my main reasons that get on my nerves. Story 30. Not my coworker, but my asterisk boss, asterisk. I had a crafty data entry job. Nothing difficult, but the pay was crap, and all of the good employees left and made twice as much working elsewhere. I only stuck around for as long as I did because I was halfway out the door, moving out of state to go to college. When I started at this place, I was a temp. My boss, Lori, Verbally abused everyone except for me. I figured I was somewhat shielded since I wasn't technically their employee. So when I was asked if I wanted to be hired on permanently, I said no and told her bosses that she was a bully. They just shrugged and said, yeah, that's the way she is. I pointed out that this was unacceptable. She once slammed a coworker into the wall. Hard. I don't know why. How she wasn't fired for this is still beyond me. She once told a coworker that she was stupid to her face, which I overheard. She later tried to deny this. She often spoke about beating the crap out of people in her front yard. She said she once slammed her sister's face on her driveway repeatedly. She bragged about this stuff all the time. She also owned multiple guns and bragged about them. I was apparently the only one who was horrified that someone so unstable owned guns. She once threatened to beat my ass because she thought I was talking about her behind her back. When she saw a coworker and I talking in the parking lot, we were literally talking about donuts. Yes, really. She screamed at me like a banshee, jumped in her car, and squealed tires, zooming out of the parking lot. I emailed all of the bosses and told them what happened, and told them I felt unsafe at work due to Lori bragging about her guns and her history of literally abusing people at work. The bosses said they'd handle it. They grounded her for 3 days. She wasn't allowed to speak to anyone, but she was still at work. She scowled at me the entire time. Last I heard, she was still working there some 6 years after I started there. She's the only person I've ever known that I sincerely wish something bad would happen to her. Story 31. I worked in an office with a literal cat lady. She had at least a dozen cats and didn't have enough money to care for them. She looked like a cadaver. She very skinny, her skin was waxen, her hair oily and limp, and she stank. I won't even talk about her teeth. For some reason, she thought I was her best friend, even though I'd never socialized with her outside of our office and never sought her out inside of the office. I was just there to do my job and go home. But I was the one she came to in order to get and moan about how everyone was against her. She also thought that the vet should treat her cats for free because reasons. I don't know. I worked there for about 7 months. It was a temp job, and every day I heard more about her cats than I ever wanted to hear. She also had no concept of personal space, so I got to smell them too, whether I wanted to or not. And whenever she wasn't parking herself in my cubicle, someone else would take her place and give me an earful about her. Man, I hate office politics. Story 32. We had a dude who made dirty comments about a coworker at my last job, and this woman is still more infuriating than he was. We worked overnight at an assisted living facility, and because most of the residents were asleep, we were able to do some cleaning during this time. I'm a grown adult, so I know how to clean and sanitize. Every single night without fail, she would check on my work and would always have something to complain about. Examples include her bringing me a dryer vent to show me I hadn't cleaned it out properly because a piece of lint less than the size of a fingernail clipping was still attached, asking me to tie on garbage bags, a super insanely specific way that she never felt I did right, and her favorite single crumbs she found in remote corners of areas I vacuumed. I know what you're thinking, and no, I wasn't lazy, and I'm not exaggerating. She would try to yell at me for singular crumbs. The most insane thing, though, was her obsession with spraying the furniture with surface cleaner. We had lots of fabric-covered chairs and sodas and pillows in the lobbies, and she would spray them down with the cleaner and scrub them. She had been told personally by our boss not to do this, but decided that our boss was wrong and would harass anyone who wasn't doing it. She ruined furniture by doing this, and everything was frayed and coming apart even when it was brand new. She also loved to put bleach absolutely everywhere. She would go through a gallon jug a night clean. Eventually, I just learned to flat out tell her no and just let her redo my work. No matter how hard you cleaned, it wasn't going to be enough for her and she was going to complain. Story 33. Bruce wasn't my worst coworker, but he is the one I have the most stories about. Here's one of the easiest to explain. Bruce was trying to do some ambitious effect in the background of some poster he was making. I was summoned to help him with this problem. A simple, I'm trying to do X, but can't quite do it. So I ask him to show me what he's doing. He spends several minutes, at least 5, going through a series of steps necessary to do what he needs. Then he does something he shouldn't and ruins what he's been doing. It's just too much for undo to fix. Okay, I see what the problem is. That thing you're doing at the end? Don't. Obviously, I was a bit clearer than this. What he needed to do involved a menu item at the top of the screen. I remember what he was actually doing involved the keyboard. So he runs through the routine again. The whole routine. The thing that F's up, he does that too. All right, Bruce, you saw what happened. You did that thing I said messed things up. You've done it 6 times before I came over. Don't do that. You need to do ye instead. I prefer to make him do it. If I do it, he doesn't learn. If he does the driving, then he shouldn't need me next time. So he does the work while I watch. He does it all again. Repeat another 8 times. I make him go through one step at a time, with me giving instructions at each step. When we get to the part that goes bad, I tell him what he should be doing. He does the other thing instead. I've been there for nigh an hour, watching him ruin his file over and over again in an identical way. I even took over, showed him what he should be doing, and gave it back to him so he could do it. He still does it wrong. One last time, we go through from the beginning. We reach the last step, and I see his right hand leave the mouse and begin to travel across the keyboard to the disaster button. It's like it's going in slow motion. What also happened in slow motion was me throwing myself in front of him and snatching the keyboard away. Stop, Bruce. Stop doing that. You know you're not supposed to do that. Yeah. Then why do you keep doing it? That's what has screwed up your picture every time. That's what has stolen the last hour from our lives. Just don't. Now I'm keeping the keyboard. Put your hand back on the mouse. Go right where I'm pointing. No, that's not where I'm pointing. Anything that isn't right where I'm pointing is wrong. Go. Here. He did. He clicked on the menu I was pointing at. He went to the option that I named. He clicked. It worked. I gave him his keyboard back and we saved. Story 34. Job or registration, she smelled bad. She never shut up and always talked at max volume. Very stupid. Needed a Chevy's waiter to read and explain the menu to her. Needed to keep a list by her workstation to remember how to spell basic words like stomach and heart and emergency. She insulted others based on their appearance and racial stereotype. She asked me how much I would pay for a laptop. When I asked what kind, she replied, a stolen one. During a snowstorm, she bragged that she was a better driver than everyone else and that everyone else is stupid. The next day, we hear that she got her car stuck blocking her apartment's parking lot. When she got out of the car, she fell and couldn't get back up. A man tried to help her up, but couldn't lift her. After a second man came to help, she insulted the first guy and said he wasn't a man because he was too weak to lift her. She weighed at least 300 pounds. She was fired for sending a person with weakness and chest pain home to get his insurance card. Luckily, the hospital's shuttle bus driver recognized him coming back out of the ER and was like, "Wait, weren't you having a heart attack?" She was suspected of stealing copays. She supposedly marched elderly or patients to the ATM in the lobby and forced them to pay cash so she could pocket it. This is unconfirmed, and we only heard about it after she was fired. Seriously, damn that woman. Story 35. In a building with 3 floors, he'd use alternate men's rooms each day, never flushing the toilet when he was done. The guy thought it was hilarious to leave it there for all to see, including coworkers on other floors. Even when he was called out on it, the guy persisted leaving his 2 in plain view and somehow feeling cocky about it. Story 36. Old Man Steve. We worked for the local airport, and he would consistently do the dumbest crap I've ever seen. A common job we had to do was mow vast fields with 0 turn. Not only would he go about a slow walking pace, but he would also just straight up not cut in any sort of order, which meant he'd mow same patch someone else had because he didn't follow the plan. Then he'd forget where he had gone and do the same thing again and again. And if you've ever mowed before, you'd know you needed to have all the mowers the same height. He could never figure it out. We would tell him a height. We'd even make sure and test that all decks were the same height. Then about 10 minutes in, he'd change by an inch and everything is crap. He had a terrible temper. Sometimes near roads, your options were to destroy the mower in a ditch or shoot grass into the road and blow it off. He'd regularly scream at me for picking to just clean off the road later. It wasn't just mowing, though. We'd fill cracks in runways, and to save tar, we'd first partially fill cracks with sand. Well, he would never follow plans. So instead of following the plan to put sand where we need sand, he'd just dump 300 pounds, not exaggerating, of sand on one end and expect us to just push it along, which was slow and annoying. He even went crying to our boss when we tried to just pick up the sand in their buckets and move it to where we needed it. He was so pissed at us. He once yelled at me for mowing an area the boss told me to mow. Told me I've been here for 2 years and we've never mowed that. One of these days, if you like it or not, you're going to have to start working with us as a team. Which was actually hilarious because 1, he'd only been there 6 months, 2. That means he just skips things all the time. And 3, a few minutes before I caught him and stopped him from destroying some private, professionally done lawn care because he had no clue what was ours or not. A common problem we had with him is that he would regularly break things. He broke mowers like 5 times while I was there by ramming another mower into it. We eventually had to come to the conclusion, with our boss's advice, to just let him do whatever, even if that means old man Steve was just doing a pointless tasks all day. We, 3 college kids, ended up just babysitting this old guy, checking in every now and then to make sure he didn't fall over and died. Your tax dollars at work, ladies and gentlemen. Story 37. Would have to be creepy mad. Hour-long bathroom breaks, late-night creepy messages to other female workers. Didn't pull his weight. Let other people do all his work for him. Damn that kid. Story 38. When I was working in my university's cafeteria, food services, I was put in the little sandwich selling shop in one of the buildings on campus. I had the closing crap in the afternoon around 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. One of the girls who worked the shift before mine, they get the lunch rush, decided one day to leave all the crumbs and dirt that gathered up from the lunch rush for me to clean. When I got to the station to take over my shift, I was met with her pushing the broom on me and saying, "Since you don't do anything during your shift, I left this for you to clean." I don't need to explain how messed up this was. Firstly, I do actually do plenty during my shift, since there are always customers who came to get a sandwich. And secondly, I have the closing shift. So I did inventory, which was a get to deal with due to how pedantic and strict the school's food services people were. So not only was it very disrespectful of her, she was actually wrong in her statement. The best part, had she simply approached me differently, I would have gladly cleaned the shop for her. Hey, we were super busy and didn't get to clean up. Could you do it for me? Thanks. This is probably a very mild example of a bad coworker, but I haven't had a lot of work experiences, so it's the best I have. Story 39. First off, keep in mind I'm a gal. So there was this one dude at the warehouse I supervise her at that follows other men into the bathroom. Complaints were brought to me by several guys in the department over it. This dude was standing 2-3 feet behind other guys while they were in the bathroom, just creepily staring at them, meat gazing as well over their shoulders. Nothing was ever done about it, even after I raised hell with HR. So one day he did it to my so. My so and I were dating at the time, highly frowned upon, but duck it. Company can duck off. That was the incident that HR cared about, because my so responding to a meat gazer harassing him in that manner was the real harassment. While I do agree with HR over the matter my so should not have done it, I can't blame him. So the creepy meat gazer, still with the company. Story 40, my lead. Small team of just he and I, so I spend all day with him and no one else. He sits around playing Candy Crush on his phone all day while I do most of the work. Complains about the Democrats ruining the country all day. Having to get out of his chair, having to do his job. When asked a question pertaining to our line of work, he doesn't have the answer to. He makes something up or talks in circles. Doesn't mean anything if I have the answer. I'm not the lead. I'm wrong. Told me if layoffs come, he'll retire, so I don't get laid off. Layoffs look imminent. He recommends I get my CDL to get a new job because he doesn't want to have to retire and see his wife every day. After a supervisor confronts him about sitting around all day, he threatens to take him outside and beat his ass. When you've worked somewhere for 35 years, you can treat everyone around you however you want. You can do whatever you want. No one cares. Nothing matters. Story 41, my former GM. He managed to talk his way to the top, but didn't really know anything. He was also a creep who tried to hit on every woman in the office and would often try to use his position and title to get favors. He made the work environment so toxic that almost 40% of the workforce quit. Still, the owners loved the guy because he knew how to talk his way out. I was already planning to leave, but he made it even easier to go. Last I heard, the company is struggling to hire people and is not doing well, but he's still there collecting a 6-figure salary. I'd like to think he'll get what's coming to him, but life sometimes just doesn't work that way. Story 42. Ducking Amanda. She smelled so bad and knew it because she'd make excuses. I forgot to shower. I showered, but my washing machine is broken, so I have to wear dirty clothes. There was documented disciplinary action about her hygiene. One day, she legit smelled like old maxi pads and got sent home. Same girl always forgot to eat breakfast, so she took extra breaks to gob McDonald's and Uncrustables in her face. She was obese. Also wouldn't vacuum the store at closing because she heard screams coming from the vacuum and thought it was ghosts. I documented everything. Verbals, written warnings. She always stopped whatever bullcraptery was afoot at the second write-up. Third was termination. I finally got the green light from HR to let her go. Then the very day she was getting fired, our owner decided to shut the store down and gave everyone, including Ducking Amanda, severance and unemployment. It's been over 10 years, and I still feel my blood boil when I think about it. Story 43. Back when I worked for Subway at a specific store, I worked with a guy. Let's call him Doofus. Doofus didn't really like me. I came in and was the one calling the shots. He didn't like how orderly I was and how I was there to work and not goof around the entire time. I do enjoy having fun at work, but the guy was a straight-up clown. After a couple weeks of working with him, the manager had hired a new employee. It was my job to teach. Doofus took it to himself to make sure the new employee wouldn't listen to me and was teaching him almost everything wrong. Doofus was also sick one day and kept puking in the back. Customers could still hear him. And some walked out because of how gross that was. He ended up going to the bathroom and was in there for quite a while. He came out and said he needed to go home. I told him he could. 2 hours later, customer walks out of bathroom after being in there for just a second and says the bathroom is absolutely horrendous. I walk in there and he has puked everywhere but the toilet. I was gone a week later. The store closed down not even a month later. Story 44. I currently have one. She's a shelver at the library where I work and she's a chronic liar. Some of the time it's just stupid crap that contradicts other stupid crap she said. Her housemates are game developers for Nintendo. Next week they're YouTube famous and live solely off their YouTube earnings. Next week, they're real estate moguls. Her father is a multi-millionaire robot builder. Her father is an immunologist. Her father is a surgeon. Her best friend has celiac disease and can't eat anything anywhere. Her best friend lives off McDonald's hot cake, but some of the time it's damaging. She got angry at our branch manager once and told everyone that she grew up in the house behind branch manager, as she's the same age as branch manager's daughters, and she heard her beating her kids every night despite her attributing another area previously as where she grew up. I called her out on it, and apparently she told everyone that I only did that because I'm on a higher pay grade than everyone else because I'm the manager's favorite. And I told her that in person, as a threat to not mess with me. I am not, and I did not. Then it causes issues where she creates scenarios, and when you go to deal with them, you realize they're not true. Fortunately, she's rostered on across all 6 of our branches, whereas I only work at one, so I don't deal with her daily. Story 45. Bruce wasn't my worst coworker, but he is the one I have the most stories about. Here's the shortest one. I came into work one day and started printing out a bunch of chapters for a meeting later in the day. I find it's faster to print one copy and use the printer manager to tell the printer to reprint that job 4 times instead of telling it to print 5 times up front. I have the bulk feeder removed because it just causes jams. So the tray empties and needs refilled a few times. Bruce opens up a ream of paper only to see that there's red marks on almost every sheet of paper he touches. He's getting upset because he thinks we got a batch of flawed paper. Like a whole bunch came off the press with ink on it and they all came to us. I look at the paper for a few seconds, then I grab Bruce's hand and flip it over. He'd cut his thumb and was bleeding on all the paper. Story 46. My current coworker is one of the worst people I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. She argues with everything my manager asks her, and because she's been there for 25 years, she gets away with it. She frequently likes to change her schedule and come in early just to surprise me, and often waits for me to leave the room before turning on the radio that plays the same 4 or 5 pop songs over and over all day. I can only hope that one day she will announce her retirement, and I no longer have to deal with her stupidity. Story 47. I worked at a golf course, and Sean, the cart attendant, was the worst, I'd say. Sean was just plain lazy and got the job because his grandfather worked as a ranger there. If I saw my name on the schedule with him, I knew I'd be doing all the work, even though I was a clubhouse worker. We'd often run out of carts and have to help him because he was so slow. And if he closed with you, well, get ready to clean the bathrooms, restock the merchandise, vacuum, etc. by yourself. We once caught him sleeping in the cart storage area on a busy Saturday. Needless to say, he wasn't asked back the next year. More recently, it was Don. Don was a 60-year-old maintenance guy who my pharmaceutical company hired. He had spent most of his years as a maintenance guy at a warehouse, so it was a massive difference. I can't really fault the guy. He had a ton of good experience, just wasn't a good fit. He rarely did paperwork or use any computers. 2 huge things in the pharma world. Every other day he was asking me how to log into his account. He also liked to just rip farts all day in the office. Nice guy, just a terrible fit. Story 48. We hired a new server who claimed she didn't have added, but appeared to me to have the worst case I've ever seen. She said it was just her personality, that nothing was wrong with her. And she had no need to consult a doctor about her personality, and her entire family was the same. We couldn't have our daily meeting with her in it. The manager was very nice and patient and tried to answer all of her questions, but she couldn't go 5 seconds without speaking. He'd try to tell us the daily stuff, and she would interrupt with a question. He'd try to answer her question, and she'd interrupt before he spoke 3 words, then interrupt his next answer to ask 2 more unrelated questions. Manager, today's special is today's. Her with zero self-awareness. What's a béarnaise sauce? I hate mayo. It's disgusting. How do any of you eat it? What's the price? Our specials are always so expensive. I can barely afford my new socks. Do you like my new socks? My friend Janice likes them. Are we done yet? Oh, you've got more? Aren't you supposed to tell us the special? Didn't we have that last month? Do we often do the specials again? How many times might we do it again? Like, can you give me some examples of when and why and what specials we might do again? What time is it? One server, Erin, who was famous for speaking her mind straight up, called her out and asked her to shut up and let the man speak. God bless her for that. A week later, the new girl was gone, fired for trying to frame Erin and get her fired. I think she hid silverware, then put it in Erin's drawer after she had left for the day, then turned her into management for not doing her closing duty. The manager had to deal with 2 or 3 family members calling in to yell at him and insist Erin needed to be fired for not rolling her silverware, and their girl hired back with an apology. Story 49. There's a lot of disgusting stories here, and I've posted about bad retail managers before, so I'll post a story about a disgusting colleague instead. I used to work in a very well-known department store with a colleague who was vegan and an environmentalist before it was really a popular thing, so I'm talking a good decade or so ago. There's nothing wrong with that, of course, but she would moan about the communal fridge and microwave being used to store and cook meat and dairy, when she was the only vegan in the building, and constantly say things like, "You know how that poor animal died before you started eating it?" And things like that, and would always be talking about her new, environmentally friendly cleaning, beauty regimen when nobody asked her. that kind of thing. She got into moon cups pretty early when they cost a fortune, and you couldn't buy them in shops. You had to order them from specialist websites. However, despite the staff room being at the back of the store with the ladies' toilet in the room before the staff room, she would insist on taking her moon cup out in the ladies' toilet and take it through the staff room into the kitchen sink to rinse it out, where people were eating and preparing their lunches. Every time. She'd have this big smile on her face as she would walk, though, saying, "Hi, just rinsing my moon cup out," like she was advertising that she used one and wanted us all to see it. She'd surround it with tissue so it wouldn't drip, but it was still obvious what it was. Somebody mentioned to her once that maybe she should rinse it out in the ladies' bathroom sink instead, but she got really upset and said that was disgusting as people wash their hands there. That person, along with a few others, went to HR to complain, and they were pulled into the office and told it wasn't appropriate to wash it out where people were eating, and she went mental, saying the HR officer was sexist and didn't care about the environment, and made such a fuss about it that they were asked to leave the building. They never came back. They were never fired. They just chose not to return. Story 50. I used to work at a debt settlement law firm. They were pretty crafty, and you were better off handling the debt yourself, but that's beside the point. I worked in data entry with her. She got suspended for a few days for actually tossing the mail rather than processing. This included settlement offers and up-to-date balances or harassing emails, letters from debtors. But that's not what made her the worst coworker. Like I mentioned, this was a debt settlement law firm. We took monthly payments from people in order to settle their debt, so we had sensitive banking information to process their payments. Well, she got caught using their information to buy things online. That's right. This woman literally stole money from the poor. People who are already in debt, and she stole from them. The lowest of the low. She went into HR crying and begging not to fire her. They told her they didn't call her in to fire her. They called her in because the police were outside to arrest her, and they escorted her out of the building and arrested her. Story 51. Kristen. I was 16. She physically shoved me into the drive-thru when she decided I needed to get there faster, and she weighed a lot. I should have freaked out. No one did anything. Crap, parents. What can you do? Now, if someone did this to mine, I would destroy their world. Story 52. Patricia. Patricia liked to think there was a pecking order in low-level warehousing, and since she had been there the longest, she had seniority. She would complain the wood dust made her skin look bad, would regularly stand around doing duck-all, would moan non-stop about doing things she hated, and would gleefully talk crap about you to everyone else. For whatever reason, she really didn't like me. Perhaps because I hated things going wrong, so I'd make everyone double-check their crap. Or maybe because people liked me more than they liked her. I have no idea. In one memorable encounter, our box count kept coming up wrong, and as she was at the end of the production chain, I asked her to count the box and ensure there was a correct amount. She flipped crap, screamed at me that I wasn't in charge. It wasn't her problem, and that if I wanted it done that badly, I should do it myself before she stormed away and we had a body down for an hour. When she came back, not a word was said to anyone. Just as well, really. Story 53. I'm a teacher, and I have lived through some nutbag teammates in my career. My school is pretty aggressive about getting rid of bad eggs, so at least I didn't have to deal with these people long. Here's a few highlights. One admitted in a parent meeting that she did not grade an essay based on the team rubric. She said she just read it, and it seemed like a 65, so that's what I put down. I mean, what? Assign a failing grade if you have to, but you've got to back it up with a rubric or something. Same one as above. Super young, had no clue how to use a shared Google Drive, Google Docs, no email etiquette. I had to help her set up her work computer. Different coworker. In the middle of a team meeting, asked out loud, "Wait, what is tone again?" We are English teachers. Tone is a very foundational concept. I've had several coworkers bring their own kids to school when they're sick. WTF? That's not cool for 47 reasons. We had a lady who drank 2 huge margaritas during lunch on a contract day. Contract hours for my district are 7-3. Then went to the second half of the professional development visibly intoxicated. Same lady came to my room on the 4th day of school, before classes started, and asked if I had anything for a headache. Sure, I have some Aleve, Tylenol, liquid gels, the good stuff, and some other OTC stuff in a box in my desk. I took it out and smiled broadly and said she could take what she needed anytime. Teachers gotta stick together, right? She poked my stuff around with her finger and said, do you have anything stronger? Making meaningful eye contact. No. The first chance I had, I grabbed my department chair and told her what happened. The lady was gone by December. Good riddance. Quite a few people who think teaching is summers off. Leave at 3. Just be the cool teacher. Everyone thinks that because they've been a student, they know how to teach. Story 54. I was a senior graphic designer at 25, and we hired a junior designer for a contract. He had 25 years experience as a graphic designer and decided that that gave him the right to ignore my requests and my advice because he had more experience than I did. Anytime I would assign him a task, he would ignore it. Over the month, he worked for us, Anytime I asked him about the status of a project, he would say, "It's done." We started calling our printers to find out the status of the jobs he was supposed to have sent them weeks prior, and they informed us that nothing had been sent. When he was confronted about it, he said that all the projects he had worked on were in a folder called Done on his desktop. And of those projects, none of the ones I assigned him had even been created. Apparently, his only other employer, whom he had worked for 25 years, had a network folder, which they used to manage completed projects. They trusted him so little that he would lay out content, then place it in the shared Done folder. The graphic designers would then correct his mistakes and then send them out for printing. He just assumed that because he had created a folder called Done, everything was good to go. It took us 3 months to correct all his mistakes and recreate all the projects he botched. Story 55. I was working at a cafe, and one of my coworkers was an older man. I'm going to refer to him as Stoneface, since he pretty much always had a semi-sour, stone-faced expression on his face. I hated working with him. He thought that women wear beneath him. He was really harsh to me and my other female coworkers, but the one other guy working there, besides the boss, could just stand by the counter, sipping coffee and play with his phone, and Stoneface said nothing to him. The tip of the iceberg was an incident that almost made me explode. In this incident, there was me, Stoneface, LC for lazy coworker guy, and Alice, not her real name, of course, for a female coworker. Now, LC was in love with Alice, but Alice already had a boyfriend and was not interested. One day, before Alice comes to work, I hear Stoneface saying something like, Alice should be together with LC instead of her boyfriend. Me. Stop. She doesn't like him, and she's already taken. Stoneface. It's a modern time. They can share. He seriously suggested that Alice date both her boyfriend and LC, almost talking about her like she was an object or toy to pass around. I was really close to punching him square in the face. I protest. Said that Alice is her own person with her own opinions. Stoneface didn't listen and proposed his brilliant idea to poor Alice. Once her shift started, she got so uncomfortable. I stepped in and told Stoneface to stop and that she didn't want it. I later told Alice that she should speak to boss, because what Stoneface said was sexual harassment, and that I would support her if Stoneface ever decided to bring it up again. I also told boss later and said that if Stoneface ever suggested something similar to me, I would leave instantly and report him to the police. I'm so happy that I don't work with that damn git anymore. Story 56. I worked in my local movie theater for a couple of years, but was originally just going to work there over a winter break. I started along with Debbie. Debbie started the same day I did. By day 2, I knew pretty much everything I had to do in every possible shift. Debbie still needed help opening the register from time to time, could not fathom that a vacuum cleaner could get clogged, flat out, refused to clean the men's restroom, and was constantly on her phone. But here's the kicker. Winter break only lasted for 2 weeks. We were hired to cut the regular employees some slack, as their exams were pretty close. I was in high school, and we have those before break. The regulars were college students and have exams after the break. As such, we weren't really supposed to request days off. Yet Debbie begged for a day of, claiming it was an emergency, so Bossman relented. The emergency? That day was the only day, save Christmas and New Year's. Her boyfriend got up from work, and she just had to go on a date with him that day. That alone would be bad enough. But the fact she decided to go on a date at this ducking theater during a day she was on leave for a supposed emergency really tied the whole thing together. Story 57. I tend to get on with people and haven't had too many coworkers I don't really like. One was a guy I sat next to who used obscenities. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't mind swearing, although I don't personally. This guy had an internal well of anger and bile and let loose at everything. If he used an obscenity, and he used them constantly, he said it with vehemence and meant it in a deep and literal way. His favorite was pussy. The other one was a guy who was apparently good at his job, but was the sort of arrogant self-promoter that really gets on my wick. Almost certainly drove a Beamer. Anyhow, he talked a lot about his ideas of how to get young women to sleep with him, even though he was married. Anyhow, he moved on, as it contractors do. And I thought no more about him for about a year, when we all got a warning message to delete him from our contacts. He wasn't in my contacts or LinkedIn anyhow. He had moved to another town for his new contract, fitted out his rental flat with hidden cameras, and set up a website purporting to be a sugar daddy connections agency with himself, of course, as the talent scout auditioning the young ladies who applied to the ads. I think he got 3.5 years for unlawful connection and fraud. In today's environment, he would probably be done for making and visual recording, or similar crime, as well. He was right about one thing, unfortunately. Because the girls who complained actually consented to having sex, he wasn't charged with abuse. He was scum, and I wouldn't piss on him if he was on fire. Story 58. I had a coworker who literally would do nothing but tell my higher-ups they needed to fire me because I wasn't as organized in her way as she was. I worked front desk at a hotel at the time, and my first day with her. She refused to check in a U.S. soldier who had a room with her 2 kids under her husband's name, who was camping that night as part of a reenactment. Of course, I told her she could clock out. I'm not a manager, as I checked the family in. Over the next several months, I had to record our interactions because she would say I made some backhanded comments to her and left the front desk messy. My bosses always took my side, though, because she'd had a reputation there before and only took her back on because they were desperate for staff. She was part-time, too. Story 59 had a coworker many years ago at a camera store, photo lab I worked at. She was hired by the manager because she was a member of the same church. Not a smart woman. She would go out to lunch with her husband every payday. Hers and his alternated each week. Well, they would always get fried chicken. What's wrong with that, you say? Chicken would give her violent diarrhea. She would spend the rest of the shift in the bathroom, which unfortunately doubled as our darkroom for loading paper for our 1-hour lab. It smelled awful. I mean, real awful. No lady should ever smell that bad. I can still smell it, and it's been over 20 years. So, okay, she was allergic to. We pointed out to her she might want to lay off the chicken, as I obviously had an awful and immediate effect on her digestion. She denied it was the chicken. She had pizza with her husband. Nothing. Subs? McDonald's? That wasn't the only thing she was stupid about either. She had the most beautiful handwriting, but she couldn't spell or think for herself either. Any item we sold, if it was over $30, we had to write a handbill for it. Not hard, it predated computers being a common thing. I was printing on the Kodak machine when she comes up and tells me she doesn't know how to write up an item the customer wants to buy. I looked over and it's a tripod. I tell her to write down what it says on the box. Later, I go through the bills to do the sales up when I notice she has written up everything in exquisite handwriting on the French side of the box. She's dumb enough not to know she's looking at a foreign language. Story 60. A depressed drunk a hole that thought skipping breakfast and lunch made him more macho, when it just made him an even bigger banana head who would yell at people in front of clients for doing things the way he told them to in the first place, before he changed his mind all of a sudden. Big surprise your fiancé left you. Story 61. Fawn was a complete psycho git. She set the mood of the workplace, and every boss was afraid of her. Complete tickin' time bomb. It wasn't until she finally met someone dumb enough to date her that her goofy ass calmed down a bit, but she was still insufferable. She loved when she was in control, but hated when someone didn't put up with her crap. This rarely happened. Saw her threaten an elderly coworker who was a third of her size. She was legitimately insane. She never really wore makeup, but when she did. Her mom would visit often, and let me tell you, the apple didn't fall far from the tree. Kind of sad in a way. Actually ran into her a couple years ago, and I dodged her hug. She looked like she wanted to slap me. Story 62. Her name was Caroline. She started 2 years after I did, and I was her manager. Right off the bat, she did not like me simply for the fact that I am a guy and was her boss, and that she actually had to work and not socialize with the e-commerce department where her friends were. Within the first 2 weeks, she reported me to HR 3 times over the most petty crap, but we had cameras all over the office, and each claim was debunked by the footage. When she realized she was not getting anywhere with tattling on me to HR, she changed tactics and tried to be nice and buddy-buddy to me, and even a little flirty. I shot everything down, told her 0 about my personal life outside work, denied her requests on social media, and made my accounts all private. This infuriated her because, according to another coworker, she was hired with the hopes of taking my job and climbing the ranks quick to be even leveled with her friends in e-commerce. When she couldn't find any dirt on me, she started spreading rumors about me in the office. Well, this went nowhere, as I was actually a great employee and my bosses knew that. I was mid to senior level, and she was a new hire right out of college with her friends as recommendations. And once HR finally started taking notice of what was going on, she was let go, and so were a few of her friends for workplace bullying. I sometimes come across her on LinkedIn, and last I saw she was working at a peer one, but had a new job basically every 8 months because no one can work with her. Story 63. 2 people, actually. I was tasked with training the new guy who was going to take my position as I was being promoted. I trained him for about a week. He was nice, but had a nasty habit of talking about the girls at work, comments in which he liked. He never told them to their face, only when we were alone. He also constantly commented how someone as young as me was tasked with training someone as old as him. He was at least 10 years older than me. I was 21 at the time. Then at my new site, there was this janitor who at first was cool, however, then turned into the worst thing you could ever want at a quiet, peaceful job. Yay. A gay-hating, science-denying, gossip-loving, hallelujah-singing Baptist preacher. After the mask came off, he didn't hold back. He made his stances known. He didn't like me much, because I don't care if anyone is gay and that I was an atheist. He specifically didn't like that I knew the Bible pretty well and used it against him when he annoyed me. Thankfully, his job was eliminated, and he had to go. Story 64. Let's call this kid Aaron. He was all sorts of messed up. For you see, Aaron was a twin. His twin worked at the same place. His twin was one of the best workers I've ever seen. But Aaron, on the other hand, where do I begin? He was super religious. Not a bad thing. but he shoved it down everyone's throats trying to get them to convert. He used to smoke cigars. Then when he quit that, he wanted to get everyone to quit smoking because he did. Noble, but the way he went about it was terrible. He could not read a map and relied too much on GPS. He got lost going to a place he was at the day before because the GPS was malfunctioning. When he tried to read a map, he tried while driving. At a delivery, pickup, he'd get out of the truck and disappear to God knows where. Everyone else ended up doing the work. Then he'd reappear towards the end. It was common knowledge he'd pleasure himself at work, disappearing at the shop, often to do so. I made the mistake of giving him my cell phone number in the beginning. One night, he texted me every hour on the hour to send him adult film. He was late by 2 hours that. Once sat at a rest stop for 2 hours on the highway before calling to say the truck had died when someone went to pick him up. The truck started up right away. Story 65. Got hired at an insurance company, and while going through training classes, there was this one girl who obviously had trouble with boundaries and oversharing. She would brag about her sexual exploits to the other trainees. One day, she stood up from her seat, and her skirt hiked up, and she was wearing thong underwear, and her whole ass was visible. And one of the other girls let her know you could see her ass, and she said she didn't care because she was proud of her body. There was this one male trainee who happened to be in a wheelchair, and she decided she had a thing for him. She said her father had been in a wheelchair. She started following him around, trying to do everything for him, like open doors, when he could do pretty much anything himself, as if she was his caretaker, and he couldn't get her to leave him alone. So she latched onto this one girl I'll call C and kept sending her these long emails talking about all the sex she was having. C didn't know what to do and didn't want to be rude, so she either wouldn't reply or she'd say something like, "Well, use protection." But then the girl invited C to be in a threesome with her and started being pushy about it. C asked her to stop, and she kept being pushy. So C finally had enough and reported her for harassment. But when they reviewed the emails, they said that C had participated because she said to use protection, therefore she was encouraging it, and because she let it go on for so long before saying anything, so both of them got fired. Story 66. A girl I worked with at a certain dollar company back in high school. She was a bully in high school, and when I applied, she immediately came over to me and started crap-talking other employees before I even got hired. She rarely did her job correctly, would spend hours talking with customers. This was in a small town, so everyone knows everyone, and got really bitter when I got a promotion less than a month in, and she had been there nearly 6 months. Understandable, but I actually had decent work ethic. I only worked there 8 months, and towards the end, since 2 shift leaders were leaving and we were already on a skeleton crew, she got promoted to my level. She would wave it around like a flag and insist that she was ranked above me since she was full-time, even though we worked the same amount of hours. After I left, a coworker hit me up to vent about her insisting he is gay when he is not. As I said before, she was a bully all through high school and had given him crap about him having a JED instead of attending school. I've had to step in before during classes when she was picking on my friends, or anyone really. I just hated her and the way she kept getting away with it. And I asked if he wanted me to confront her since I don't work there anymore, and thus would not held accountable by management. But unfortunately, he said that it was already being handled. Story 67. This girl and I were friends for a long time, but she liked to micromanage me, not a manager. So I calmly approached actual management about it. Since then, she's made my life a living hell. She yells about me during the shift and does anything she can to make my job harder, even if it means we both lose money. It's not just her, honestly. She talked crap about me constantly, and it exposed all the other underlying giddiness in my workplace. No one stuck up for me. We got a new manager, and even though literally every manager has taken my side in this, her talking about me ruined any chance of me making a good impression on him. He controls my wage, and so when I realized how much he hated me, I gave up and quit. I was at that job for 2 years and left many friends behind. But the shifts were becoming so dreadful I cried on the way home most days. Last thing the manager said to me was that I'm stronger than that, and I can't let her win. Like, this git makes more than I do, and there are no consequences for her behavior, so why the heck would I stay? Story 68. I worked at a deli, and so did she. There were several occasions, such as cussing me out for taking my 5 minutes break, or telling me that she's going to leave my ass if I'm not done with my crap after I'd done half of her crap. I'm too nice and stupid. Or the time where I was in the back cleaning, and she was supposed to be out front, however. She was ignoring a police officer that had tased her brother. One time I was up front serving customers. Then a random guy came up and asked if he could have a sample of our chicken. As our chicken was all a bunch of thighs, legs, and breasts, I explained that we didn't give out samples like that. He insisted we did, and then she came up beside me and said, "Fine, I'll do it." The guy ate a chicken leg in front of us and walked off. No real surprise. Then the next day, our manager was inquiring about the incident. My coworker then, in front of our manager, said to me not to do that, by which I kindly reminded her that I did not. But thanks for letting me know. This was like a fraction of the crap she... Easily one of the worst. Story 69. Had an assistant manager who was a little a hole. When he first started, he acted like he was the next big thing. He refused help from other store managers offering by telling them, "Oh no, don't you know? I'm the expert here." Would throw a fit when he didn't get his way or was told he was wrong. I've seen him in full-blown arguments with coworkers and customers. Every time it would be his misunderstanding, not theirs. He'd show up every day and tell us a tale of his sexual exploits. Whether true or not, none of us wanted to hear it. If an attractive-looking female comes in, he drops what he's doing and stares at her, drooling like a dog in a dog treat factory. After she leaves, he had to say a comment about her appearance. After talking on the phone with a certain manager, he always comments on how nice her ass is. He was an a-hole to us employees and other managers. Called us Jeets a lot despite us getting onto him for it. He talked down to us condescendingly, even though we were all older than him. He was reported, suspended, and later fired after 4 months of this. Story 70. We'll call her Anne, because that was the insane git's name. Anne, as she loved to remind me, worked in bookshops for 25 years. And yet somehow in all that time had not learned how to 1. Be polite or helpful to customers, 2. Keep track of stock properly or use the computer ordering system, 3. Answer the ducking phone. I once saw her make a customer cry. She was so rude to them. She once complained to the manager about me because people would ask me questions instead of her. This was apparently my fault. Silly me for being nice instead of belittling people for daring to not know something. She attempted to blame me for other duck-ups she was responsible for. One of them on a day when I wasn't even in. During her time at the shop, 3 other workers left because they couldn't work with that anymore. Direct quote. Her husband had attempted died twice, and most of us were convinced it was largely to get away from his wife. Her hair was reminiscent in style and color of a WW1 pith helmet. Story 71. Had a farmhand that was horrible. He started working here, but after a while it was obvious that he was a lazy puz that didn't like cows, animals. He would procrastinate giving the cows straw for their bedding. The cows once got out on a field where there weren't supposed to be, and he just closed off the road and went home. He would occasionally sleep at work, and he was complaining about everything. The last straw was when I noticed a cow coughing and called him over to show him, and his answer was, "I don't care, I'm clocking out." Turns out she had a severe infection and almost died. After a while, my current boss took over the farm and fired the a-hole. When this all went down, I was only working a couple of hours here and there, and when I noticed the sick cow, I was just out on a walk since I also live on the farm. I totally ratted him out every time, though, and I was coming to the point where I was going to tell them that I can't work with him and don't want anything to do with how he kept the farm and animals. Before I did that, he got fired, though. Story 72. Had a coworker that quickly caught feelings for, and it was mutual in the beginning. My feelings did not last long, however, when I learned he simply did not understand what no meant. Any interpretation of that is correct. Tried my very best to distance myself while still working at the same place. He didn't take the rejection well, and one night exploded on me, throwing anything he could get his hands on at me and screaming the most heinous crap. Talked to the owner, but he was friends with the coworker's parents, so it wasn't much help. Ended up leaving that job shortly after. He started stalking me, showing up at my house unannounced, sending me unmarked snail mail, creating fake social media accounts to contact me, leaving gifts on my car's windshield, showing up places I frequent. Tried to apply to my new place of employment, and when I told my manager the history, and they decided not to hire him, he began harassing the owner via email for the job. Once he realized he wasn't getting anywhere, he then went to my best friend's workplace. I ended up getting a restraining order ex parte. Good riddance. Story 73. Worked at a bank as a teller. I have no clue how this girl made it through the hiring process. She was incredibly airheaded, emotionally unstable, and just all around a bad hire. She constantly whined and complained about everything, failed at the simplest of tasks, took breaks constantly even though we weren't supposed to, and none of us got breaks. Overall, the most annoying person I've ever had to deal with. Anytime she was trying to help a customer, she'd get herself all worked up and then freak out and just give up entirely, and someone else would have to take over. She gave out the wrong amounts of cash so many times it was a miracle if her drawer actually balanced. I could go on and on. She quit. Surprisingly, they didn't fire her. One day, by going into the break room and hiding her keys, walked out without saying a word to anyone, sent a text to the manager saying she couldn't do the job anymore, and blocked everybody's phone numbers and stuff. She did that the same day I walked into work with my 2 weeks' notice to hand to the manager. Not because of her, I'd gotten an internship at another place and was moving on. Story 74. When I had an internship, I let it slip out to a work friend that I was gay, something I hadn't intended to tell anyone since it was just an internship. Crazy cat lady hears me mention my boyfriend over the cube wall and immediately starts laughing. She then proceeds to call me Fruity Pebbles every day and throw random shade at me. She wasn't removed because she was a necessary employee. She then brings her cats to bring your child to work day since they're her damn babies. I am seriously allergic to cats. So when I came into work and found 2 cats in my cube, I had to take the day off. Otherwise, I'd swell up like the blueberry girl from Willy Wonka. In retrospect, what was weird was how quick her attitude towards me changed. Like she was just looking for an excuse to give me crap every single day. On my last day of my internship, I was offered a job. Told them I'd only take it if she was fired. I was told something to the effect of, Jace the power bottom, you know we'd do that if we could afford to. Story 75. Well, there was Larry. Larry had embedded himself in office politics to the point that our IT director, though he was, irreplaceable. He owned our ERP system and wouldn't train either of the two people who'd been hired on to also support it, so that he kept leverage. He stole equipment to buy substances and still came back afterwards because the bosses didn't believe anyone else could do what he was doing, minus the narcotic-induced thievery. He eventually gets sent to rehab, and while things were harder for a month or two as the rest of the team got up to speed, everything was better by the time it was decided that he wouldn't be welcomed back. Then there was Marvin. He was everything you'd want in a coworker. Hardworking, friendly, always willing to help out. Great coworker. So it came as a surprise when he didn't come in Monday morning, being so reliable, and without a call. A few hours later, it came out that over the weekend, the toddler son of his girlfriend had upset him, so he stuck the kid's hands in a pot of boiling water. Fortunately, the girlfriend sided with the kid and not the guy, so he went to jail. Story 76. Not the worst, but probably the most disgusting? Had a serial crapter with us for a good 2 years. He always took a dump midday and would always take a picture of his masterpiece. He would find creative ways to show us his art. On better days, it would just look like a python. But damn, the worst ones are during Mexican lunch-outs. Story 77? Man, this summer was a goldmine for this question. Never working there again. Tell you that. Boss's daughter was in a hole to everyone, except me. She just shoved her tits in my face and forced me to go to Dunkin' with her and stuff. Trust me, I didn't enjoy it. I also didn't enjoy people saying I was seducing her for personal gain. It was so uncomfortable. Different coworker was slightly scarier but more subtle. She was obsessed with me, like celebrity crush, theoretical junk, but actually doing it to me. For example, she still has a plastic cup I drank from. She stole my pen. I spent a month with her before her friends told me it was happening. She was so casual around me. Maybe I'm bad at hints, but apparently talked about me all day when I wasn't around. Her friends told me because they wanted me to do something to make her shut up since they were sick of it. They showed me that she'd been stealing my stuff that I thought I just lost. I just avoided her during work and ghosted her ASAP.